Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday, February 19th, 6:30 p.m., and I'd like to welcome you all to the Columbus Common Council regular meeting. And if I could please have a roll call at this time.
Finkler.
Here.
Gray.
Present.
Hammer is excused. Motive.
Present.
Reed.
Here.
Relke.
Present.
Steiner.
Here.
I acknowledge this meeting was posted and noticed according to law.
Thank you. And if you could join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And at this time, I will take a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Alder Finkler will move to approve tonight's agenda.
Motive will second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Alder Finkler and a second from Alder Motive. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. At this time, I'll open the floor for correspondence and communication. First name I have on the list is Chris Groh, is here from the Wisconsin Rural Water Association. If you would like to come up to the podium, Mr. Groh. And then I believe Michelle and Jake from Columbus Utilities will be joining him.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the invitation tonight. I'm here to present the City of Columbus with the award for having the best tasting water in the United States. Y'all came in first place. Best tasting water across the whole United States. And I have a couple notes. Everybody wants to say something when you're a winner. First of all, this is available live stream on the NRWA website someplace. If you want to see it, I will send it to Jake. It's an hour and it's very boring until we win. So, but basically, there was 40-some samples from across the United States. Alaska, Hawaii wasn't there, but just about everybody else in the continental United States had a sample. Now, reason it's 41 and not 50 is most people know enough that their water just isn't going to win, so they don't come in. The final five are listed in the press release that I sent you all. But basically, little town in Louisiana came in third, a small town in Kentucky came in second, and y'all came in first place. There were two side people that didn't make it to the top three, Massachusetts and some other place that nobody remembers because they didn't win. So we use this. Rural Water uses this as a way to get funding through our federal congressmen, federal representatives, and our senators. Tammy Baldwin sits on, she chairs appropriations for Department of Labor. We are heavy into an apprenticeship program, not in Wisconsin yet, but soon, I hope. And she also co-chairs or sits on the appropriations committee for USDA rural development. So she helps get money from them through to all of y'all and to us as an association. So if you go for a loan or grant through USDA rural development, that money is there. She also champions the EPA side with the SRF funds, the state revolving funds. So the funding you get from DNR for clean water and for safe drinking water also comes from that. So this is big. This is big news for her. See, she can use that in a lot of places. Congressman Pocan out of the Madison area, also sits on the appropriations committee for the congressional side of appropriations for USDA RD. So he can also, he's close enough to claim kind of an ownership on this side too. It's close enough to Madison here. So basically, my message from you to the rest of the United States was, this is the Wisconsin way. Used a few expressions. How's your folks? How you doing? Be careful for deer. I'm driving home tonight. That kind of thing. And that got caught by an awful lot of people, especially from the Midwest. I had 2 or 3 people from the Dakotas shake my hands, a guy from Minnesota. Hey, I know exactly what you were saying there. So it's the Wisconsin way. I also told him Jake and his crew says, hey. So I got a message from my national board director, Kevin Mraz. He is the he runs Algoma Sanitary District, and he's our national representative on the board from National Rural Water. And he says everything very well, so I'm just going to use his words. This win shows amazing dedication from the entire Columbus Utilities team to be selected as America's best tasting water. This award cannot be achieved without recognizing how the entire utility works together, from the commission authorizing capital projects, the clerks working with customers, and so much more, to the operational team managing the entire water system, providing safe and great tasting water 24/7, 365, all the way to the customer's tap. Way to go, Columbus Utilities. Thanks for winning one for Wisconsin, and more importantly, for your community and the residents you serve. National Director, WRWA, Kevin Mraz, Algoma Sanitary District Number 1. Those are pretty good coming from Kevin, and he says it well. I got a news feed today from National. You guys made it to the Milwaukee Sentinel. You got into the governor's X account. What was that Twitter? It used to be, but you made it into his account, so he thanked you all and sent that out, which is quite good. And you're going to get a call from Channel 3. Is it Channel 3 from Madison? So yeah, they're coming. So I got that this afternoon too. So this is good. You guys should make hay with this. This is a good chance to show off Columbus. We use this also to show off our municipal utilities from across the state. We never pat ourselves on the back. We can pat people like Jake and Michelle on the back and say you do a good job, but nobody really pays attention to water or sewer until the tap doesn't work or the toilet doesn't flush. And that point, everybody knows who the operators are at that point. So with that, I'm going to. These made it safely all the way from DC, and hopefully it'll make it to Jake's hand in just a second without me dropping it. These are nice ones. They're bigger than they used to be. Used to be little things. So with that, I'd like to present this to Jake and Michelle from Columbus Utilities. Guys, congratulations on having the best tasting water in the United States.
I'd just like to say a few things. Thanks, Chris, for being out in DC to accept this award on our behalf. We greatly appreciate it. The other thing is, this is a huge honor both for the utilities and the community. It's a great achievement on the water department. I try to give them my support and the tools to use, but they're the ones that do the fantastic job that keep our water system top grade. Thanks, Jake.
Thank you so much. The other name I have on the sign-in sheet is Ruth Hermanson. Did you want to speak now or at the cow? Okay. Is there anybody else who did not get a chance to sign up to speak who wanted to speak at this time? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, and I am looking for a motion to approve.
Are we able to start discussion if nobody's
Oh,
going to do
yeah.
a motion to approve?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I actually have a question on the committee of the whole minutes. On the second sentence, it says, "and does not allow other possible land purchases." I don't remember saying that we wanted that in the RFP. And maybe I'm being crazy and just don't remember it, that's fine. But I don't remember that being said, and nor is it in the RFP further in our packet.
You talking about 12?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Does anybody,
I guess I would
Can you
request-
repeat what you said? I'm sorry, I was trying to find where you were referencing and I missed.
So where it starts with "does not allow
Uh-huh.
land purchase," I don't remember our saying we wanted that in the RFP.
I remember us talking about, so what I'm reading this as correct as what we talked about, but maybe I'm reading it differently, and if folks are reading it differently, then we should probably reword it. But I read this as that there are concerns with the RFP because it is only specific on the land that we own and doesn't include all the property, and also doesn't include just the general comment
That makes sense.
of what is the best solution. And that, it's not implying we're gonna buy other purchases, it's just us removing that
Right.
part.
Okay, that makes more sense to me, because sorry, I was confused on that.
Yeah, it's not super clear.
Yeah.
And then I had one other item I wanted to discuss in the consent agenda. Our mayor is an incredibly busy man, and I am wondering if he is the correct representative for the Eastern Columbia County Joint Municipal Court. Typically, that would be chief or a city administrator, or even possibly a clerk. If this is as an interim,
In speaking with Joe, I know he wanted to do this just until till the council election, and when all the mayoral appointments to different committees, he intended to place someone on that committee from the council. I'm not 100% sure if this group would even meet between now and the election. I'm not sure on the frequency or regularity of this court committee, that their meeting schedule.
can we just clarify that that's an interim position for him then?
I don't see why the motion couldn't address that.
Okay. So,
Maybe have an end date for sorry.
yeah, maybe just say after the election. So with those things in mind, I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the addition of interim representative under the mayoral appointment, which will be reviewed after the April election.
Gray seconds.
okay. We have a motion from Alder Motif and a second from Alder Gray. Is there any further discussion on this? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have passed the consent agenda. First item under new business is to consider and take action on IT options for the city of Columbus with the staff recommendation of going with RIME. I'm looking for a motion to approve RIME with the IT bid for Columbus.
Motive will make a motion to approve the agreement with RIME.
Gray seconds.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion from Alder Motif and a second from Alder Gray. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Do we need to do a roll call vote on this since it's a contract? Okay. Yeah, then we'll do a roll call.
Motive.
Aye.
Reed. Aye. Steiner.
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Finkler.
Aye.
Roki.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Next item under new business is to consider and take action on Fluid Quip third driveway request. I think Dan Grove spoke to you guys 2 weeks ago, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the request for a third driveway for Fluid Quip.
I'll move to approve a third driveway for Fluid Quip.
Reed will second.
I have a motion from Alder Finkler and a second from Alder Reed. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Next item under new business is to consider and take action on the Aquatic Center Water Management Agreement with Carico. You guys talked about this a couple weeks ago as well, so, Alder Finkler?
Oh, no, I was
Oh.
I moved to, I wasn't sure who put their light on first, but I'll move to approve the renewal of the water management contract with Carico Aquatics.
Motive will second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Alder Finkler and a second from Alder Motive. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Roll call vote on this one, please.
Roki.
Aye.
Aye.
Finkler.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Steiner.
Aye.
Motive.
Aye.
6-0, all in favor.
Next item on the agenda is to consider and take action on the ATV UTV ordinance sunset clause. Alder Gray?
I have one issue. I do not see anything here of us repealing the existing ordinance and creating a new ordinance. This is wholly inappropriate and not how things work.
May I?
Absolutely.
Nothing has been drafted yet because I did not want to spend the time to guess which way you might be going. So the ordinance will need to be amended or repealed in part at some point in time as soon as there's a firm decision on where this is headed.
Alder Finkler?
Alder Finkler moves to make steps, I know, moves to provide direction to remove the sunset clause out of the ordinance and amend it. That's all we can do is really amend direction.
I don't think there is something that we can.
Yeah, like, how do we do the motion then, Attorney Johnson?
I don't think there is one, is my problem. This isn't how business works.
Well, this was before the cow at the last meeting, and it got kicked forward to here without any formal decision being made.
Yep.
And in fact, you asked me to provide a little bit of research on the topic of whether or not an advisory referendum could be held. And I did alert all of you that Alder Finkler's comments were correct at the last meeting, and that the law was changed and advisory referendum for this kind of issue are no longer permitted in the state of Wisconsin. This is also not a situation where a binding referendum can be held. So you have the option. Ultimately, you have the option of repealing this particular provision in the ordinance so that the sunset clause goes away. You have the option of extending the sunset clause for a specific period of time, or you have the option of sending it back to the committee of the whole for further conversation and deliberation.
Yeah.
And what I need to hear at some point in time is Attorney Johnson do this, and that's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah, and I think we're in a sticky situation here because, you know, we made the comment in the past cow that if it's at cow, it has to move to council, and it didn't finish with what it needed to be done at cow, and now here it's at council. So I think that's why we're in a sticky situation here too.
So to answer your question, Alder Finkler, if someone is inclined to make a motion, it would be to direct the city attorney to draft an ordinance doing something.
Okay. Alder Finkler moves to direct the city attorney to draft ordinance to remove the sunset clause from ordinance 777-22.
Motive will second.
Okay. We have a motion by Alder Finkler and a second by Alder Motive. Is there any discussion? Alder Gray.
I think the appropriate thing would be to put this back to the COW where we can review an ordinance. Like, the ordinance needs to be reviewed before we can just vote on it. We can't just say, create an ordinance, it comes to the next meeting and we're gonna vote on it. It should be reviewed, it should go back to the COW. Yes, the attorney should be making an ordinance, but we shouldn't just be telling him to repeal and create a new ordinance that goes to our next regular meeting. This should be going back to the COW.
It will, right?
No, not the way you made your motion.
So will you allow,
Technically, it will go back to the COW because I'm going to draft an ordinance, and then the ordinance will go back to the committee of the whole for review, and then it will go forward to the council for a final vote. And it is going to be about a 2-sentence ordinance, so it's not tremendously detailed. But that would be the proper procedure to, after you decide whatever direction you want me to go, then it will come back to the COW for another review, and then supposedly at some point it will come forward to the council for a final vote.
Is that satisfactory to you, Alder Gray? Okay.
Yeah, that's not really how motions in our meeting work, but that's fine.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Otherwise, I will take a vote at this time. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Nay.
Okay.
Simply because it's not how it's supposed to function.
The next item on the agenda is to consider and take action on the Public Safety Building RFP. And I'm looking for a motion to approve for distribution.
Alder Motive will make a motion to approve the revised RFP for distribution.
Steiner can second.
I have a motion from Alder Motive and a second from Alder Steiner. Is there any discussion? Alder Finkler?
I just want to make sure this gives us an opportunity to have in the future add-on in-house services for EMS. I know we've talked about that numerous times as a possibility for expansion. And I just want to make sure that this includes that.
I think the most critical thing for the council to consider with this RFP is we are requesting firms to submit proposals, and we're going to review those firms based on their qualifications and similar work. And I think, I wish I would have said this at the last discussion a little bit more and have that be more of the focus, because I think we got into the weeds a little bit. There was a lot of good discussion. But like one of the first questions when you hire this, when we select a firm and they sit down and go through a scoping meeting is going to be, okay, what land does the city own, and, you know, what are potential other parcels, and where is development occurring? And they're going to ask all of these questions. And so the idea of incorporating the future of EMS along with police and fire is definitely a topic that will likely come up. I want to highlight one of the additions that I made was the idea of the selected consultant being expected to do a public presentation of their work, so that we get public comments prior to this coming to the council, so that there's a revision and an ability to edit the initial plan with those public comments, so that we're not in a situation where we have to go back and amend a contract, that there is the ability to kind of get an edit and a final version then that comes to the council, hopefully for review and your consideration.
Are there any other questions, comments? Okay. In that case, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to consider and take action on interim department head amendment to the Policy and Procedures Handbook. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the interim department head amendment to the Policy and Procedures Handbook.
Alder Motif will make a motion to approve the interim department head policy and procedures amendment in the City of Columbus handbook.
Gray Hill, second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Alder Motif and a second from Alder Gray. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is to consider and take action on fee schedule updates. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the fee schedule updates.
Move to approve the fee schedule updates?
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Alder Finkler and a second from Alder Motif to approve the fee schedule updates. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Roll call for this one.
Finkler.
Aye.
Relke.
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Steiner.
Aye.
Motif.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
6-0 in favor.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is to consider and take action on the city and rural fire group agreement amendment. And did I see Crystal roaming around here somewhere? Matt, did you say she wanted to address this? She was at the meeting?
Crystal did attend the meeting. I'm not sure that she's in attendance tonight. I know Attorney Johnson has worked on the language. I know that we also have representatives from the rural fire group here this evening to address any questions or concerns the council has.
All right. Paul, are you just on standby, or did you have something that you wanted to add up front?
I am basically on standby, but the first, or the agenda item in front of you right now concerning the amendment to the agreement was shared with the Rural Fire Group a couple weeks ago, and I know that I spoke with John Kraus about it, and I did not hear back from him, but I know that he was on vacation for a period as well. So I'm hoping that it was satisfactory to the Rural Fire Group.
Crystal's here and can speak. For those not aware, the audit started in place this week, so Crystal's had her has had her hands full today.
Speaking for them, but are we on?
No. There you go.
Okay. All right, so last Friday, I was able to attend the Rural Fire Group meeting. They did review the amendment. All of the, I don't know if you call them, the communities were represented, 2 of which had not had their public meeting, but said yes to both the amendment and your next item, the purchase. So they were assuming that as soon as it goes through council today and you sign the amendment to the contract, then they will go around and get all the signatures this week. The final 2 meetings are Thursday, if I remember right.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I can. So we had
Oh,
Your turn.
Yeah. I'm John Kraus, president of the Rural Fire Group. Everything was good with everyone at the group. There was 2 towns that didn't have their monthly meeting yet, so it's this Thursday. I don't foresee any problems with the amendment. I don't foresee any problems with the purchase of the truck. Basically, it's approved. Technicalities that these 2 town boards haven't ran it through their regular board meeting yet. That'll happen on Thursday night. The plan is that as soon as they have that done, they're gonna get a hold of me Thursday night. Friday, I will run around and get all the signatures, because I'll have to visit each municipality, because the amendment that Attorney Johnson drew up both needs the chairman and the clerk signatures on it. So I'll work on doing that Thursday after, or Friday morning, all day Friday, and when I don't get done on Friday, I'll try to get cleaned up Saturday morning with the intention of getting it back here, and hopefully we can get this thing taken care of on the 26th. E1 wants to get it done at that date. That's kind of the tentative date that we got picked, due to the fact with the deadline on the 28th with the price increase, to make sure it gets inputted in a decent amount of time in case there's problems submitting everything. So that's the plan. I don't see any hiccups. It's just a technicality in our end, but we'll make it work. I'll make it work. I'll make it work, and we'll get everything signed and back to you guys on Monday. So.
Thank you. Alder Gray?
I suppose it's more our next item, but they kind of bleed together, obviously. I'm okay with approving this, but our next item, approving the purchase prior to the entire rural fire group approving this, seems premature. So, I don't know, maybe we need to put like a condition that it's approved by the rural fire group or something on the next one. I don't want to approve a purchase of a truck before it's actually approved by the rural fire group.
That was going to be my recommendation as well, that we approve it with the condition that the rural fire group has to be fully approved and signed.
Any other comments? Okay. In that case, can I first take a motion on the action on the city and rural fire group agreement amendment?
Alder Gray moves to approve the amendment with the city and rural fire group.
Motive will second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Alder Gray and a second by Alder Motif. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. I believe this one can be a voice vote, right? Yeah, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. Next item is to consider and take action on the fire department purchase contract to replace truck 92. And I will take a motion with whatever amendment you want to make. Alder Gray?
Alder Gray moves to approve the purchase of the fire department truck to replace truck number 92, pending the approval of the rural fire group.
Motive will second.
Okay. I have a motion by Alder Gray and a second by Alder Motif to approve the purchase of the truck to replace 92 with the amendment that the rural fire groups all are in approval first. And this one would be a roll call vote? Yeah.
Steiner.
Aye.
Relke.
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Finkler. Aye. Motive.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
6-0, all in favor.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to consider and take action on claims in the amount of $4,276,574.52.
Alder Gray moves to approve the claims in the amount of $4,276,574.52.
Motive will second.
Okay. I have a motion by Alder Gray and a second by Alder Motif. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. A roll call, please.
Gray.
Aye.
Steiner.
Aye.
Relke.
Aye.
Motive.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Finkler.
Aye.
6-0, all ayes.
Okay. And then next is the report of city officers. Matt, go ahead.
I'll be brief with my comments. I want to start by recognizing City Clerk Pat Gable. As all of you are aware, Pat has announced her retirement effective March 1st, and I gave her the night off as her reward, which I know she was reluctant. The mayor had planned to say some good words about Pat for her length of service for the city and the diligent work that she's done, and I agreed to share those with you, but also agreed to let Pat go home for the night. So I think she's probably enjoying that more than any words said for her. But I've really enjoyed Pat. Pat's helped me immensely as I've come into the city in just knowing even where to look for things and what to be looking for, and have enjoyed working on putting the agendas for the meetings together over the last 2 months, and we will miss Pat in the city. So, secondly, I'm going to butcher the last name, but Kane Brauskowski has been hired as the Recreation and Aquatics Assistant. His first day is tomorrow. Last week, we had a action plan session with all city department heads and went through kind of the list of things that we need to address. And we went through a prioritization exercise, identified 3 main priorities divided into 3 groups amongst the department heads, and kind of put some action steps towards how we accomplish those things. It's my intent to still schedule a workshop with the council to work through the action plan in a similar process with the council, as well as talk about employee compensation and some other items. I'd be remiss not to mention that on February 7th, so the day after the last council meeting, Mike Kornman, our Community and Economic Development Director, Mayor Hammer, and myself attended a Wisconsin Housing Economic Development Association seminar in Madison. The first part of which was just WIDA, and I've learned there's WIDA with an H and WIDA without an H. This was WIDA with an H, and they went through 4 grant programs that they're unveiling for housing initiatives, housing focus in the state. The second part was a matchmaking exercise, if you will. There were a number of cities in attendance. I think there was 20 cities that attended around the perimeter of the room, and developers in the middle of the room that kind of went around from each table and just talked about what development type of projects they've done in other communities, what they're looking for. It was a really informative session. I joke that we would be dangerous a year from now at an event like this. There were communities that were really evolved and had a lot of materials, and it was a really good introduction and opportunity to network. So we'll be looking for more of those similar opportunities moving forward as we try and address housing. I know it's a statewide issue. We've all identified that it's an issue for Columbus as well. That concludes my report.
Okay. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We are adjourned. Does anybody need a break, or should we just roll right into the committee of the whole meeting? All right. In that case, I would like to welcome you to the Columbus Common Council Committee of the Whole meeting. It is Monday, February 19th, and it is about 7:06 p.m. And could I please have a roll call?
Finkler.
Here.
Gray.
Present, sorry.
Hammer is excused. Motive.
Present.
Reed. Here. Relke.
Present.
Steiner.
Here.
I acknowledge this meeting was posted and noticed according to law.
Thank you. And at this time, I would take a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Motive will second.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion from Alder Finkler and a second from Alder Motive. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Citizen comments. Ruth, did you want to speak now or actually during the? Okay, that is fine. Anybody else wanted to speak tonight who didn't get a chance to sign up? Okay. Included in your packet are department reports from fire, library, police, and treasurer. And the first item for discussion is to discuss bids regarding the 2024 street project, and that is Jason.
Thank you, Amy. And before you tonight on the agenda is consideration of our 2024 streets and utilities bid recommendations. So bids were opened on Friday, February 2nd. We had, I think, 8 prime plan holders. If you remember, we bid this a little earlier than normal because we were very successful with bids last year. We were hoping to do the same thing. We had some good news, bad news type scenarios. I think the bad news was out of the 8 plan holders, only 2 bids were returned to us, which is better than 1. And as a result, when we opened them, we had both bids very close to each other. The low bid was Forest Landscape and Construction for a total all-in of $1,225,571.25. The second low bidder was $1,262,793.75. So relatively close in the grand scheme of things, within about $37,000 difference. As a result, both those bids fell one on each side of our estimate. Our estimate was right between those two. So we felt pretty good about the bids, even though we only had 2. We did go back and review the bids. The way we had set this up were 2 base bids. One was for the Selden Street, Richmond Street construction portion of the project. That's a residential area. We bid that differently just because we wanted to track the costs for the special assessments differently from the base bid B, which was Commercial Drive. Those were both mandatory parts of the project. And then lastly, there was some alternates that we threw on there to hopefully get some good pricing for projects that we've been talking about and that were too small to kind of be standalone projects to get good pricing. Particularly the first alternate was the cemetery paving. They've been looking at doing some work up there repaving, and so we added that into the contract, and we came in with, I think for the price that we have, about 3 times the amount of paving than they were previously quoted. So we were very happy to see good pricing, and they had acknowledged in their meeting last month that they'd like to move forward with the bid. So we'd like to add mandatory alternate 1 into the contract. Mandatory alternate 2 was the work on Inglesby Street between the tennis courts and the country club. The road is very rough as it connects the park to the street. There's also an unfinished area by the tennis courts, which is gravel that really isn't a parking area, but people kind of pseudo make it a parking area. And our tennis courts have been much more widely used through some of the programs here. And so we felt like this is something we'd like to get a cost on. We also are bringing that up to ADA compliant standards by connecting the courts to the paved area with a walkway. This project we felt from a staff perspective was something we wanted to entertain. Those bids came in very close to our estimates as well, so we were very happy with that. And then there's 2 other alternates. One was for Warner Street. There's a section of roadway there that is from an old phase that hasn't been upgraded. It's missing curb. Water runs down into Interpack Park. Also runs through a private residence off the street. So we felt that this has been necessary. We've been looking for ways to do that project, but haven't found the right vehicle at this point. But I think based on the pricing here, this gives us an alternative to do that. And then lastly, Black Hawk Drive is a short dead-end street down by one of our largest industrial customers, APC. They requested that we do some upgrades along their curb line as a result of them doing some improvements on their driveway and their parking lot. And so we put that in there as well, and those prices came back pretty good. So all in, we've talked to staff about the bonding and the borrowing, and essentially we were hopeful that we would recommend moving all of this forward after talking to staff and kind of get this all checked off our list. That would still leave our street maintenance money for us to do some crack sealing and some slurry sealing. So we feel like this bid that's before you tonight for consideration gives us some flexibility from the staff level to get a lot of work done this year. And it's relatively close to kind of the estimates and the budgets we were planning. So we're asking you tonight to move this forward for consideration for Forest Landscape and Construction for the 2 base bids and the 4 alternates. Just a little bit about Forest. They've been a contractor who has done work in the community, I believe since 2007, the first year I came here and did work, they were doing a project. And so they've done many since, and they've done a great job, I think, in the community of working with the departments and the staff to do work. And so they've been successful many times, and I hope it's a appreciation of how much they like the community that they continue to bid these projects aggressively. So I think with that, that's all I had. Is there any questions on the bids?
Alder Gray?
So to clarify the alternate 2, Inglesby Street, is that just like confined within the country club area? I'm really not super familiar.
Yeah, so so the end of Inglesby Street kind of dead ends and the curb stops, and then there's an asphalt connection that runs into Fireman's Park. There's probably a couple hundred feet of roadway there. It's just a rural section with no curb and gutter. The pavement's deteriorated. There's a lot of potholes there. The water doesn't drain properly, and it's that section that we're looking to replace. So essentially, from where I guess the country club paving stopped, we would match into that, kind of complete that whole intersection with the park where the skating rink is, and then we'd come all the way out to the tennis courts and connect it back in with the new parking lot area. So just kind of fixing up that whole kind of corner there that's been neglected and has some drainage issues.
Okay, so it's going to be connecting more with other services like in Fireman's Park and things of that nature.
Yeah, the country club, the park, the tennis courts, that whole area will get improved there, right? That's kind of between the end of the street and the park facilities.
All right, I have less issue with that. Paying for something that the country, I still think something like a country club should be earning enough income to pay for its own parking lots and paving things. But if it's going into the pavilion and tennis courts and everything else, maybe I'm a little more okay with it. I'm still just, things of that nature, it should be turning enough of a profit to be self-sustaining.
Any other questions? Alder Reed?
Oh, thank you. No, not a question. I like the selections. It's a really nice variety of types of streets that are getting addressed. I'm just so tickled that we still have some money in the roads budget after over 1.2 million for either choice. I remember just a couple of years ago, we were trying to get, 500,000 for a year for all roads maintenance, so very nice.
Yeah, and just to be clear here, there is sewer and water work associated with this, and that work totals, probably $325,000 of that number. So again, if you remember in the capital streets plan, your streets borrowing for this project was $1 million, kind of in effect. The streets portion is below that. So again, it's over because of the utility costs associated with it. So, and keep in mind, we are talking about special assessment tonight. There is resolutions to special assess some of this work back to both the residents and the commercial area as well. So, that also does help offset the costs as well.
Any other questions or comments? Is everybody comfortable moving this forward? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is to discuss special assessments on businesses on Commercial Drive. And Jason, that is you again, I believe?
I can start this, because with a great deal of help from Jason, I summarized a lot of his comments in my memo. And we'll tag team this, I hope. But I think the concern here is the assessment process of the city has been in place since 2016. And in that time, it's my understanding there hasn't been an assessment to a commercial business, that most of the assessments have been residential. And so we just wanted to bring this to you to ensure and share with you that oftentimes businesses have greater frontage than residential. Staff feels it is completely fair to assess businesses the same way residential property has been assessed, but wanted to make you aware that just because of the nature of the amount of frontage, some of the assessments may be larger than a traditional residential assessment. And give you a chance to talk about this, and Jason can clarify anything that I misspoke on or messed up, but that's why this is on here preemptively before we send out assessment notices.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And so I had kind of requested just to go over this with you guys to make sure, as you've authorized me by resolution to prepare the special assessments, I'm effectively done with both the residential and the commercial section. And if you recall, we split that up into two resolutions because we knew that they were going to be going out to two separate groups that were going to be dealt with differently. As Matt had mentioned, 2016, we had been doing assessments before that, but the council at the time set forth a policy for repayment and what we would typically assess. And so, again, the highlights are curb and gutter, sidewalk, storm improvements, driveway aprons. Those aprons are typically always concrete. Storm sewer is generally always pipe and inlets, and curb and sidewalk speak for themselves. So we've been following that, and that's worked, I think, pretty well for us, right? And I'm getting pretty good at doing these assessments over with the same things. We're getting less people here to talk about it, and they're accepting this is what this is in the assessment because it's a policy. Shift forward to the commercial assessment. This year, it's a little different because we don't have curb and gutter on Commercial Drive. We don't have sidewalk out there, and these are businesses with probably 600-700 foot lot frontages. And so I wanted to kind of have a quick discussion tonight just to make sure that we're all on the same page, because obviously as I prepare these, I have to look at benefits to the properties and then make some decisions. And I'm trying to eliminate bringing you forward something, you giving me advice, bringing forward, going back and forth. So we kind of wanted to come back before you tonight and say, the idea of what I'm focusing on here for the commercial businesses, one are a full cost of driveway and culverts. Again, much like the sidewalk is being paid at 100%, For residents through their driveway aprons, we're using the culverts, for example, to be paid at 100%, through the driveways. And I feel that's appropriate. There wouldn't have to be a culvert there if there wasn't a driveway, in my opinion, so that should be 100% of the business cost. With that being said, there are a few instances where we were extending culverts in this design to help facilitate the placement of hydrants and stuff, and we wouldn't be assessing that back to the property owners as a result. In my opinion, that property owner shouldn't have to pay for an extended driveway to bring a fire hydrant up the grade. So we did take that out. The other things that we were looking at is assessing the driveways at cost, much like we assess the concrete aprons for residents. These are asphalt, and they're very large driveways. As you've seen from Fluid Quip requesting, there's multiple driveways. They're large driveways. So what I was proposing on was assessing from the edge of existing roadway asphalt to the right-of-way line, the cost of the asphalt for their driveway apron, much like we would pay for the concrete in a residential section, 100% cost back to the owner. Again, I think that makes sense with the policy intent. And then lastly, the storm system, and this is probably the one where I did a little bit of ad-libbing here, but the way we've done it historically is add up all the pipes and inlets and manholes, and then what we would do is we would take the full cost of that and then assess 15% of it back to the property owners, and the city would pay for 85%. In this particular case, we have very few, other than the culverts, which are 100% accessible in my assessment here, as I'm proposing. We have very little storm improvements on this roadway, but we have a lot of ditching. And so we're cleaning up the ditches, we're taking out sediment, we're improving the drainage, we're reshaping the slopes, we're improving the shoulders on the road and those type of things. So my proposal would be to treat the ditching the same way we would treat the storm system. And, have the city pay for 85% of that and assess 15% of that cost back to the property owners. So in that particular case, we're staying consistent with all those components that are picked up by the properties in your policy, but now we're just doing it a slightly different and applying that to the businesses. So with that being said, to Matt's point, with these, with this, project costing over $500,000 and these lots being fairly large, some of these assessments on the businesses, start creeping up into, I want to say maybe $10,000, $15,000. And again, I don't think that's unreasonable for a large business to pay for roadway improvements out there to fix this type of thing. But I also know that this is outside the norm, right? So when we get the public hearing, and we get businesses in here starting asking questions, I'm fully supportive of kind of that methodology, but I also wanted you guys to be aware that this is a kind of a departure from what we normally do, and I can't just point at the policy and say, this is why we're doing it, here's our policy. So I guess with that, that's where I'll open it up for questions or comments if you guys have any for me related to that. If there are none, or if there's some minor tweaks, this is preliminary, so it will come forward. There will be a public hearing. There will be a chance for us to revise or debate or update it again. But I felt like I wanted to get a little ahead of this just so it wasn't a surprise to you guys or anybody listening tonight or any of the businesses potentially paying attention. So,
I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and I agree. The culverts for businesses, I think we should probably have something more enshrined in actual policy, honestly. Like, I think you're right, the way that we've been doing assessments and things has been slowly gaining more traction and been just generally more accepted. But I think it should be more policy focused, and we should draft an actual policy. But this as well. The culverts for businesses, with that thought in mind, I think we should have some sort of specific policy about culverts for businesses where in the times where they wouldn't necessarily pay 100%, like where we do have a fire hydrant, or if we would need something there otherwise, or perhaps we deduct the cost of whatever we would have there if there wasn't a driveway, like us maintaining the ditch or something of that nature. So it's not just a straight out 100%, there's a policy of how much they pay based on the circumstance of that specific area. I think that would be good for businesses, keep it so that they understand exactly what they're getting into ahead of time. I think that's good for everyone. But, I think basically everything we're saying is, I agree.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Are we comfortable moving? Oh, Alder, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So it wasn't specifically business related. I had a small question on the part about the proposed assessment for a rural section, no sidewalk, no curb or gutter. Just wondering if we should have anything about when a rural section would no longer be considered a rural section, where we might want to upgrade it to city amenities.
Yeah, I think that point brings up a good question. So for example, our policy, our normal policy would say that anytime we're doing sidewalk or curb and gutter improvements in an intersection, which is, really the area where, somebody's lot comes to a point, we really don't have a frontage to assess on, the city would pick up the cost. So for example, on this particular street, there was some curb and gutter that's being replaced at the intersection of Dick Street, and then I extended it a slight distance just because we have trucks parking on a shoulder and it creates damage to the edge of pavement. I didn't assess that back to any one property owner because I didn't feel it was fair to the property owner that would have got the assessment and nobody else would have been assessed for curb and gutter. And that point, I considered that part of the intersection. Now, is that in a policy somewhere? No. I think that's just judgment on my part to say, again, I'm trying to be fair with how I'm assessing the benefit to the properties. And so to your point, I think given it would be an industrial section, we have other areas around town that are in very similar conditions. So to your point, Ian, I do think having something in a policy going forward would then maybe set that precedent based off of this time around. But to your point, Trina, once we get into it, even if we do consider our existing policy and say, well, we're going to add curb and gutter, we're going to add sidewalk and some other things, it still really doesn't fit the bill for this industrial section because we have these large driveways with asphalt. And I don't think we'd be asking these people to put in, 50-foot wide concrete aprons. I still think that I would support seeing the asphalt here. But I think there would be some things that would be different. So to your point, I do think we could probably make an amendment to the policy and bring that forward at such time after maybe we go through this process and get some feedback from the businesses and we see how it goes. I'd be more than happy to work with Paul and the staff here to kind of draft up some specific, and we're probably not ever going to get it right. To your point, Ian, we're going to have all these different caveats saying, if we do this or this happens, but we're still finding with our current policy that we have things that pop up that's like, well, we didn't predict that, or, we couldn't necessarily plan for that. So, but I think we can do better than we're doing now with extending our policy to kind of cover these type of projects, so.
Any other questions or comments? Are we comfortable moving this forward? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think what I'll do is, I don't think that this discussion needs to go on a regular meeting, but I think what I'll do is I will put these special assessments back on the agenda and we'll get the public hearing set up. So in the next month or so, we'll kind of schedule that. So that'll be, in my mind, the next step. I don't know that there's further action on this just yet. I would say let's defer that until after we get into that discussion and you see the policies that I bring forward, and then we can kind of decide from the public hearing where you guys want to set that going forward. And then I think after that, there'll be some actionable items, if that makes sense to everybody. Awesome, thank you so much.
Thank you. Alder
Just
Spencer?
for consistency, I don't know if we can stick it on the list that, I know Alder Gray has mentioned a couple times now a ordinance that says if something is on COW, it has to go to council. So this is the second time it's come up tonight where it's kind of doesn't fit the bill for this, and then the ATV one, we had to move to council before even having a decision to Attorney Johnson. So I'm wondering if that can be looked into for a future COW, that we don't have to send every single thing to council if it needs to go back to COW again. That makes sense.
Alder Gray?
So if it's done appropriately, it doesn't in our current ordinance. The basic of our current ordinance is once it goes to the COW, it automatically goes to the regular meeting. If you do some other action with it, then it does not. But it does, the way we are set up now, it goes to the regular meeting. We could completely remove that and have to have a motion from the COW to send it to the next regular meeting. If that's how we want to do it, then our COW meetings would be a lot more structured than they are currently. But like with the previous one, the appropriate thing would have been for the discussion to have been relevant to what we discussed at the COW, and it only have been about the sunset clause in the RFP, and this COW could have had the proposed ordinance on it. That's how it should have functioned. It's not how it functioned.
Okay. Next item for discussion is a chicken permit for 749 Fuller Street. Matt, did we get?
We have an application here for your review. Mike Kornman, this falls under his responsibilities to do the inspection. He'll be doing that between now and the council meeting. So, but, you know, his review that this is a pretty straightforward application. He doesn't see any concerns. From his past experience, it's more about what the applicant then puts in place, and not saying that anybody's going to do anything, but oftentimes issues arise when an applicant does something that is in either more chickens or they add a rooster or something that wasn't part of the application process. So he didn't see any concern or issues with the current application.
Anybody have any questions or concerns? Is everybody comfortable moving this forward to the council meeting? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is.
Just one minor thing with this.
Yes.
I don't know if the council really needs to approve every single chicken or bee license. Like, if we have someone that looks at it, I think more we should give this authority away. And if there's something out of line, then it should come to us. Like, I don't think we need to approve individual chicken licenses. We don't approve individual cat and dog licenses. Like, I don't know. Personally, I think this is, like, we don't approve building permits. We don't do anything above or below this. Why are we doing this? Is kind of.
Okay. In order to change that, do we need to officially change that then?
Yes.
So can we move this one forward and then possibly put a discussion together on not having to move them forward going forward? Okay, Paul, did you?
Your ordinance currently specifically requires the council to grant these permits. I do agree with Ian that this probably does not need to be on the council agenda ever. And I think it started out that way because when it was new, and now it's not.
Okay. Can we
Maybe.
possibly come to the next cow with a draft ordinance to repeal that former decision, or, yeah?
Gladly.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next item for discussion is the summer concert series for HLPC. And Ruth, would you like to come speak about that?
Good evening. I'm Ruth Hermanson with CHLPC in Columbus, the Columbus Historic Landmarks Preservation Commission. And we would like to put on the summer concert series once again this summer. I'm not sure if you got something like this in your, okay, perfect. Okay, that saves a lot. And we changed the date in July just to give it a little time past the 4th of July. And the one in August is before, like, the school activities begin. So we're really looking forward to it, and there's no cost to the city. We're hopefully raise some money for the Rest Haven. And the CDDC, as in the past, they've gotten the insurance for it and covered the liability, things like that, as part of a sponsorship. So do any of you have questions? Okay, we did add the openers last year with the local different people performing. The Partners Dance Studio, the Red Bud Players, and there's a couple more surprises out there. So that really brought a lot of people out to enjoy it. And then we also moved it to the Oaks by the Boy Scout cabin for the shade. And people were real receptive of that. So they're not in the sun, in the green space by the pavilion. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is everybody comfortable moving this forward? Yes. Okay, thank you. That brings us to discuss citizens' rights to address the council ordinance. Looks like we have a draft here. Ordinance to repeal and recreate section 2-40 and 2-51 of the City Code of Ordinances. Alder Finkler?
I thought we had discussed last time to remove the 3-minute limitation.
That would be my preference as well.
And then if, there's tons of people, you can always ad hoc put it on.
Alder Reed?
Oh, thank you. I personally prefer having an expected time limit in the ordinance, whether it's 3 minutes or 5 minutes. I just think it would behoove us to have an expectation of time out there.
Thank you. Alder Motive?
I agree. I like the time limit, and this is a good compromise in that it says it can be removed if the majority agrees. So if there's a topic or a little speaker or few speakers, it could be removed. So I'd like to leave it as is.
Alder Gray?
I agree with Alder Finkler. I don't believe there should be any time limits enshrined in ordinance, because the majority of the time we really don't need them. And I think it's counterproductive to actually hearing from our citizens. Most nights we have 1 or 2 people speaking. We don't need a set time limit. If we have a dozen people signed up like we do on occasion, that's when the presiding officer should be clear that this is your time limit tonight, because we need to conduct business and we need to get through it. But for the most part, I really don't like there being a time limit. I think it should be up to the discretion of the presiding officer.
Any other concerns, questions, comments? Alder Steiner?
I guess I'll weigh in here. I like the idea of a time limit, but I also like it being a bit more the presiding officer's discretion. A time limit kind of sets the tone for how fast things can move through, even if you have 1 or 2 people. If you have a lot on discussion, you could be there for all night for people saying whatever it is that they want to say. But it should be declared before all that starts, if there's going to be a time limit. If there's not, by whoever's running the meeting at the time. But an ordinance time limit, I think, sets more of a direction as to what we can do, as opposed to just coming up with random numbers off the top of our head.
Alder Finkler?
I think we've been actively just doing that, and we haven't had any problems with that. I know when we have lots of people that come up to speak, our council president or mayor, both of you guys combined, whichever one, do state the 3-minute limit. And I remember that when I know, whatever, I'm going to say this again, but when I was at league training, they left it on the decision of the presiding officer on the time limit. And I just think it's too restrictive to put it in here, because then if somebody just wants to talk for 4 minutes, we have to have a vote on it. And, it just seems that it just seems unnecessary for us as elected officials. We're elected to listen to the citizens.
Again, 100% agree with Alder Finkler. I really think 99.9% of the time there's no reason for it, and it makes more sense for it to be imposed when necessary than for us to remove it when not necessary. It's just, I think it should be up to the presiding officer. I think it should be more in line where the presiding officer will state what they're talking about and everything of that nature, and if the presiding officer thinks it's irrelevant or abusive, I think that should all be up to the presiding officer, in my opinion.
I guess I would be inclined to agree with that myself, especially thinking of items like a presentation like tonight, where then we would have to spend time voting to undo that. Outside of that one sentence in here, does anybody have any other questions or concerns? Alder Reed?
Oh, no, I was
Okay.
still on that sentence.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just really concerned that we'll have very little way of getting an expectation out after a person has started. I just don't want there to be 5 and 10 and possibly 20-minute impromptu presentations without an easy off mechanism.
Alder Finkler?
Technically, you cannot impose a time limit after somebody has started. It has to be before, and it has to be blanket for everybody. Everybody gets that same amount. But again, this is something we've been doing. You know, we've been doing it ever since, I mean, we typically have a timer around. If there's a lot of people, we do this. I have not seen a problem with how we've been doing things. So why bring in a potential problem when we never had one? I just don't break it if it ain't, or right, don't fix it if it ain't broken. You know, whatever the saying is.
Alder Gray?
I agree completely with Alder Finkler, and it is how it has always been, and granted, that's not a good enough reason, but we have never had an issue. And we have had some fairly lengthy and sometimes extravagantly off-topic conversations. But again, the presiding officer still has the power to say that this is abusive or this isn't on topic or anything of that nature. So as long as the presiding officer has that power, no, they can't impose a time limit. But most likely, if they're talking for 25 minutes, it's pretty irrelevant or off-topic. You know, if somebody's singing Mary Poppins up here, the presiding officer can stop them. I think it's counterproductive to hearing citizens imposing an automatic time limit.
Other thoughts on this topic or any other section of Alder Reed?
Thank you. I would propose 5 minutes. I don't know if people feel like that would give a better time, just to have some type of expectation.
Alder Motif?
I would be fine with leaving it at 3 minutes and then just taking out the majority vote of the members and leaving it in the presiding officer's discretion.
I would be comfortable with that also.
Alder Finkler?
I'm not comfortable with that because it just seems to me that we're going to put ourselves in a situation to not follow the correct processes and procedures. And if we either trust the presiding officer or we don't. Saying 3 minutes, but then the presiding officer can change it without vote, it just doesn't work that way. Like how we've been doing it now is if there's 2 people signed up, sure, speak, you know. If there's 10 people signed up, the presiding officer says a sentence. Everybody gets 3 minutes. We'll have a timer. It really is like, I'm just not understanding why we need to govern something that is not been a problem. Like, we're here to hear the citizens. Do you guys not want to hear what your citizens have to say? Because I do. And I don't think that's fair to stop one person that may have good information and have to vote, or, you know, it's just not necessary in my opinion.
The reason we were doing, my understanding, and Attorney Johnson, you can correct me, but the reason we were doing this is because the ordinance as it states now says that citizens speak off camera after the meeting. And so we were trying to bring it into our current standards.
Only for off-topic things. That's not what they're.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
That's
It's
not
not for
our ordinance at
everything.
all.
Right, that, Ian is correct, that there was two different mechanisms for public comment, one for things that are specifically on agenda-related items, and one for things that were not specifically on the agenda. So we're trying to address that. I threw the time limit issue into the ordinance simply for this purpose, as to whether or not you wanted to have a timeline or not.
Thank you. Alder Steiner?
How about we set it as sort of, there is no initial time limit, but at the discretion of the presiding officer, they set a time limit of 3 minutes, because normally you wouldn't want a time limit on things. But if you have 15, 20 people signed up, creating an ordinance that says this is the time limit we go on, as opposed to saying, well, I'm going to say you get 2 minutes today, or you get a minute and a half. You know, it's like, let's have that set in stone that 3 minutes is the expectation, but only at the discretion of the presiding officer. We don't need a vote on it all throughout the council, that seems kind of silly and unnecessary, but the initial concept and way to go is there is no time limit unless it's said before all comments are made that this is what time limit we have.
Alder Reed?
Oh, thank you. No, I'm just recalling meetings from a decade ago that went until 10:30. We've gotten rather spoiled with how fast things have gone, and it's given us certain expectations that might not always mesh.
Alder Gray?
I mean, I can understand that, but I mean, that was other policies that changed in other ways that we conduct meetings, not citizen comments that kept us all night. I just really don't think that it's an issue, especially since there is no citizen that's going to be talking to us for 30 minutes without it being off topic or abusive or something that the presiding officer can say, this isn't appropriate, you need to stop. Like, that's not going to happen. It's never happened, and it's not going to happen. Like, if they're speaking that long, it's going to be something that isn't appropriate, and the presiding officer has the power to tell them to stop. Like, there's just no issue. We don't have an issue of people talking too much aside from us up here talking too much and keeping our meetings going. The public is not the problem. Like, there's no reason to have a time limit automatically.
I was going to say, I don't have the tenure that you have, Alder Reed, but I'm trying to think back to a time when we've had a large swath of the population that wants to talk, and I haven't heard at least a handful of times. Each time I prepared my notes, I really don't like speaking, and they get through what they say, and, you know, even on things that they're passionate about. I think it's unusual for us to really push the envelope on that. That's my opinion for what it's worth. Alder Finkler?
Yeah, and I agree, and I think this is just a discussion that's just going on longer than it probably needs to go on, and something that, you know I'll hear about it from the citizens tomorrow about how, you know, shameful it is that our council can't even decide on whether or not to have a time limit when there's never been a problem. Let's just start tackling the things that are a problem, and we really need to be careful on these, that we just keep churning on and making problems where there never was one.
So just putting a pin in that for a moment, is there any other portion of this that people had questions or concerns about that we wanted to address? If we need to come back to this sentence, we can certainly do that. Alder Reed?
Oh, thank you. Let's see, I believe it was in section D. I had a question on whether or not we want to allow written communication to be read into the record. Right now it's saying that we will not, but I wanted to know if that's the direction we prefer to go. Because we have sometimes had it, you know, read aloud.
Alder Motive?
I would think it matters if it's off topic or on topic. That's the huge prevailing factor.
Alder Gray?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's my sentiment as well. I have zero issue with something being read into record if it's on topic and that citizen can't join us tonight. That makes sense to have their voice heard still. It should be read into record. Or if it's for a public service or the benefit of all, that should also be allowed to be read into record. I do not believe that things off topic should be allowed to be read into record, especially since that would even be a discussion whether or not we allow it at the meeting to happen. The presiding officer shouldn't just, or any council member shouldn't be allowed to just read something completely off topic into record.
Any other thoughts, questions, concerns? Alder Reed?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I would agree with Ian that for that one, it should definitely be quite on topic and the citizen unable to come in. I would like to look into some language for that segment.
And also, I would like it to include if it's like of general interest to the public or a public announcement, you know, because like there's been times where like the police chief needs to say something or someone couldn't come in, like when it's, you know, good of the public to announce. I don't know how to word it specifically, but that could be off topic in that scenario.
Alder Finkler?
I just wanted to add that I do want to stay in here the portion that it says that the written communication is included into the packet. So that's my big thing that I want to see, because I haven't seen that yet, and I think that would be great for everybody to see, including others on council.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm trying to step away from the discussion, argument, conversation about reading something into the record by replacing that with, put it in the packet so everybody has it. And everybody has it before the meeting, and now it has become a public record. So we don't have to, you don't have to worry about reading things into the record at all. That was where I was going.
Alder Gray?
And I like that it would be included in the packet. I still think there are instances where it should be read into record, especially when it's of a public service or something of that nature, like where also because the public isn't necessarily reading our packets entirely. So I do think there are instances where it should still be read into record and it's appropriate. I just think we should not allow it to be read into record when it's off topic and not a public service.
Alder Reed?
I suppose I'm thinking of the situation where the public doesn't know about the topic until the packet has come out, and then they're very quickly trying to get out important information, and they have no time to get it to the packet because it's already published.
And then it goes into the next packet.
Alder Gray?
I'm seeing where Alder Reed is going with that one, and I think that it should read, it should be included in the packet when reasonably possible, otherwise to be included in the following packet. But it should still be, when it's a public service or something relevant, it should still be allowed to be read at that meeting, in my opinion, but it might not make it into that packet sometimes. So I think I agree with Alder Reed that there should be a provision for that.
Other thoughts, questions, concerns? We need to make a decision about time limit before we agree whether we're going to move this forward or not. Alder Gray?
I think, so just out of audible mentions, we are a 3-3 tonight. I think we should, in my opinion, we should just move forward and make the decision of whether or not there's a time limit at the next meeting, because then we'll have the mayor in a tie-breaking vote, because right now I think we are equally tied. So if we draft the ordinance both ways and pick which way we want it at the next meeting, I think is prudent.
Is everybody comfortable with that option? Okay, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda to discuss is ATV, UTV parking. This may or may not be relevant until we have the rest of the discussion on what we're doing with ATV, UTV. Good. Okay. Alder Finkler? I saw your light come on, I think.
So the direction that we gave was for an ordinance to be amended and brought back to COW to remove the sunset clause. And I think it's only smart to address this now and have that update done at the same time instead of bringing this back again. I think it will save us attorney costs. Sorry, I like you, Attorney Johnson, but it's going to save us attorney costs. Not have to keep paying you for little updates. So I recommend, as we heard from our last meeting from Chief Weiner, he did state that he has no concerns with UTVs, ATVs being able to park in legal parking spaces. And I would recommend that we proceed with that update while we're already updating the ordinance.
Alder Gray?
I actually agree with Alder Finkler. I think if they're allowed to operate on the streets, they should be allowed to operate to fully. So they should be allowed to park in the same areas as well. I don't see any reason for them not to park anywhere that a car can park if they can drive anywhere that a car can drive.
Other thoughts, questions? Alder Reed?
Oh, thank you. I would also agree. I don't want to allow them on the street and then have them in trouble for parking on the grass, because that would otherwise wind up being their most likely option. So, yes.
Okay. Any other questions, thoughts? No? Is everybody comfortable moving that forward then? Okay. Last item on the agenda is a presentation on the annual report by City Administrator.
My presentation is going to be brief. I've left each of you with a copy of this. It's also on the city's website. I want to thank the department heads for doing the real work and putting the information together. I was the guy that compiled it, but they did the work in pulling information together, talking with me about what made sense to include. I shared examples from other communities that I've seen this done in, and I really want to give a special thanks to the library and their marketing person. I know her first name is Regan, and she did yeoman's work in taking my very rudimentary marketing and making this into a really presentable document to the public. It's my hope to work with other department head or work with city department heads in taking this out to civic groups in the community, presenting, kind of giving a state of the city address, and just kind of sharing the good things that were accomplished in 2023. Because as you look through this, there was a lot of really good things that happened in the last year in the city.
Alder Finkler?
I just want to say thank you so much for putting this together, posting it on the website, and for everybody's contribution to this. I think that it really helps end each year on a positive note. I know everybody remembers the negative things and everybody remembers the fights and the battles, but I think we also need to highlight the successes and the progress moving forward. And I think this is a really good job doing that, so thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you. There are no other questions or comments on that. Next on the agenda is to adjourn, so I will take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Alder Finkler and a second from Alder Motiff. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.